All right. Hello, everyone. This is the second Path to Paradise podcast. I'm Dr. Alex Loyd, Harry,
I'm Harry Loyd.
and we're delighted to be here. We're not gonna repeat every time why we're doing this and exactly what we're doing, just for the sake of time and not making everybody listen to the same thing over and over every time. But the Practice to Paradise home study program mentorship will be released in about 2 weeks and 2 days. That I've been working on for 4.5 years. Harry and I have been working on for about 11 months. Um, it's by far the biggest program I've ever done. I believe it's the most effective program I've ever done. If you wonder what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life now that I'm an old man, this is it. The Practice of Paradise and the Path to Paradise is it. I believe it's by far the best thing I've ever done. When we release it, it's the biggest program I've ever done as well, bigger than LT3. And when we release it in 2 weeks and 2 months, I'm sorry, 2 weeks and 2 days from now, the price is going to be about 1/6 of LT3. And that is very much on purpose. We're trying to get a founders group, 144, to hit critical mass so that we can spread this. I believe everybody needs it. This is probably the only program I've ever done where I would say the teaching is more important than the interventions. But we are going to be sharing with you about 6 brand new interventions that I believe are going to knock your socks off for anything you need in your life. Spiritual issues, mental, emotional issues, health issues, relationship issues, whatever. We've never shared those before in any other public program. I have shared a couple of them as I've spoke to private groups, but not in a public way. And we're trying to, and I believe we're being successful at it, at harmonizing all of the sciences: psychology, medicine, biology, philosophy, sociology, nature, you name it, and spiritual principles from the Bible, from Scripture, and anything is open game. We can talk about the healing codes, trilogy, love code, LT3. We're obviously going to be talking about the Path to Paradise and the Practice of Paradise a lot as well, since we're kind of shifting to that from now on. Our backdrop, like it or not, I love it, but like it or not, is because the word paradise, and Harry came up with this, one of the definitions of paradise is a walled garden. And to us, that's the heart, and which psychology primarily calls the unconscious mind, the source of that 95% stress predominantly, the source of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, the source really of everything you call your life and how it's going. And so we want our garden to be like the ones behind us: gorgeous and beautiful, full of color and flowers and vibrancy and love, joy, and peace, not blackness and dead stuff and weeds everywhere and choking out the color and the beauty. Okay. So that's what we're doing. That's why we're here. We're just getting started. We want to build a community of people who are committed to living in love and helping others live in love from now on. And what could be more necessary in this crazy world that we're living in today? So we'll take questions and answers and discussion at the end. And my intention is, as long as it's a reasonable time period, we'll take all questions and comments. I hope it gets to where we don't have time to do all of them, but that's probably not going to happen for a while. And at the time that I'm reversed on my directions on the screen. So here, to me, if you think right, you win. If you think wrong, you lose. Based on the latest research, the average person leans about 80% to the negative. That's thinking wrong, and that takes you to lose. And we want to help you get from 80% negative to 80% positive, truth, love, joy, and peace. And then the interventions can help you do that much more powerfully, much faster. But again, the teaching is the main thing to change your mind about life, yourself, your illness or health, all of the above, but in harmony with all of the sciences, and bring on the science. And we're digging into that too. So we've got a teaching that we're going to share. Harry, anything you want to share before we get to the teaching?
No, I think that most of what I'm going to share will go with the teaching. But last time, at the end of our first podcast, I talked briefly about this idea that for most of your career, you've been trying to treat sources, not symptoms. And with this one, you'd sort of realize that there's a higher level of source that hadn't been addressed, which is a little bit more lifestyle and a little bit more how you think about yourself, largely.
Right. Absolutely right.
Which makes up a lot of the difference of what we're getting into with this program.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to teach on just a little bit today, and I think Harry's got a couple of comments about it as well, may be new to a lot of you, because I'm not sure if I've really shared this anywhere except maybe LT3. I have shared it a lot when I speak in public around the world. And I'll tell you this, I've never seen anyone else present this. I'm not saying they haven't or aren't, but if they have, I've not seen it, and I've looked. But I've probably taught this and had conversations with at least 100 medical doctors who have heard and seen me teach this because they were in the audience. And I've spoken personally to a good number of them. And a lot of them I would ask before the event started, okay, I want you to watch this and tell me from your training if what I'm saying is true or not true. Okay? Because I've never heard it before taught. And as of today, knock on wood, every one of them, and the latest one was just recently, has come back to me and said, yeah, you're right. And a bunch of them have said, I've never heard this before. Medical doctors, I've never heard this before. I've never seen this before. I wasn't taught this in medical school. And a bunch of them said, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. And then a day later, a week later, a few months later with several of them, a couple of them when I saw them again next time I came to Europe or whatever, to date, every one of them have come and told me, I'm not saying every one of them responded later, but a lot of them did. And the ones who did respond said, I went back, I researched, I checked it out, I Googled, I chatted it, whatever. And as best I can tell, yes, what you are saying is accurate. And this is the number one cause of physical illness and disease. And the reason that's important is because for many years, we didn't know what that was. And if you got cancer or heart disease, especially if it was terminal or something, and you were upset and you asked the doctor, well, how did I get this? I've got a twin brother or sister. I've got, and they grew up in the same place, eating the same food with the same parents, the same stress paradigm, the same everything, except, different DNA and all. How come I got this and they didn't? Or how come they got this and I didn't? Or whatever. By far the number one answer since the dawn of Western medicine is 3 words: we don't know. Now they might say stress, DNA and stress, but bottom line, why you got it and your twin didn't, we don't know. All right. So I believe if this is true, and I believe it is, and I've already stated that from other doctors. I believe this is the number one source where physical illness and disease come from. Now, next week, don't miss next week, because next week we're going to talk about where the mental emotional illness and disease come from. And it's a little bit different. It's related, of course, but it's a little bit different. But this week, number one, a physical. So Harry, can you put that up, please?
Yeah, give me a second here.
All right.
Uh,
We made a
Simulate.
little diagram since it's very difficult to draw on a board, which is what I usually do with this.
Okay. See, is that working?
Yeah, we got it. Okay, so this would be called the physical stress paradigm. And if you followed me at all, as you know, uh, according to the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta and research they have on their website, approximately 90% of illness and disease are related to the stress paradigm. According to Dr. Bruce Lipton from Stanford Medical School, it's 95+% of all illness and disease. So really, when we become ill with physical sickness or disease, we should be asking ourselves, what's the stress that's causing this? Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is a cell, any cell. And Harry, if you could do your cursor a little bit, if they can see that.
Can you see my cursor?
No, just the inner circle, the black inner circle.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you could do your cursor on it, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, that is any cell. All right. Now, probably not cell within the blood. There are cells within the blood, platelets, all that sort of thing, white blood cells, red blood cells. But this is like a liver cell, a brain cell, a kidney cell, one of those cells, any cells. There's trillions of them in your body. So any cell, the round thing that looks sort of like a kidney bean with some things inside it, that is the mitochondria. Every cell has a mitochondria. As the mitochondria goes, the cell goes. The mitochondria is like the power plant of the cell. Okay? If the mitochondria is doing its job and producing plenty of energy for the cell, it's virtually impossible for this cell to get sick. And what the research says is if the mitochondria, uninterrupted, is producing 100% plenty of energy for this cell, that this cell theoretically would live forever and never get sick. Now, we know that's not true, that in general, about every 7 years, and this keeps changing, the last one I saw was like 7 years, about every 7 years, you have a completely new body because all the cells have died and been replaced by new ones. But
the reason I've heard for that number changing is that the body replaces different sorts of cells at different rates.
Right, but I'm talking about overall general.
Right. Yeah, I've
That
usually
number
heard
keeps
7 years
changing.
as well.
And that number keeps changing. But if that mitochondria had plenty of energy all the time, the cell would theoretically live forever and never get sick. But that's not what's happening, obviously. In fact, we're sicker than we've ever been. Even though we're living longer, more disease, more surgeries, more medications, more bankruptcy due to medical costs, which is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States. More of everything. Even though we're smarter, we're making breakthroughs, we're sicker than we've ever been. Okay. And anxiety and depression are just off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
they were off the charts before COVID, and then COVID happened and they went way up.
Yeah, way off the charts now. Okay. So the little indentation at the bottom of the cell, Harry, if you can do your cursor on that, is a gate. And it opens and closes, all right? And the gate allows things into the cell unless the cell is in stress. And when the cell's in stress, it closes the gate to protect the cell, okay? So what would it be protecting from? All right, let's talk about that. The little round things, the red round things around the cell, if you can do your cursor to those, Harry, are blood vessels, capillaries, lymphatic drainage system, whatever. All right, but blood cells primarily, and the blood is supposed to go all around the cell, but it's not supposed to come right around the cell where there's supposed to be a dry state. There's supposed to be a dry state around the cell. All right? Why? Why is there supposed to be a dry state? Because if it's a wet state, the gate closes. So what's the big deal about that? Okay, let's look right
This
under the gate. I'm
this
sorry.
little bit where it says dry or wet should really be more around here.
Yeah.
This was previously a very crude drawing on a whiteboard, and I had ChatGPT give us a better one, but it's not quite perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So the dry or wet, move it up into the next ring, sort of. Okay, so at the bottom of the gate, you see a blue set of letters and a green set of letters, Na and K plus. Na is sodium, K plus is potassium. If the cell is going to be healthy, the gate open, and the mitochondria having all the energy it needs to keep the cell healthy, sodium and potassium are supposed to be coming in and out of that gate, passing each other continuously. And the potassium binds to the mitochondria, and that's what causes the mitochondria, which really looks like a little wiggly finger. That's what makes it start wiggling. And when it wiggles, that produces the energy for the cell, and the cell does its job. If it's a liver cell, it cleans the blood. If it's a brain cell, it processes information, etc. It reproduces, it cooperates, it gets rid of waste, it takes in oxygen and nutrition and hydration, all of that, all right? If the cell closes because there's a wet state instead of a dry state, which is a threat to the cell, then the sodium and potassium don't come in. The potassium doesn't bind to the mitochondria and cause it to wiggle, so it starts wiggling less and less and less until eventually, if that gate doesn't open up, it stops. If it stops, the cell is either dead or it's dying. And before it dies, the odds go through the roof that it will manifest a disease gene that never would have manifested any other way except that cell being in prolonged stress. The sodium and potassium passing each other going into the cell creates an electrical field in and around the cell. If there's a wet state around the cell and they don't come in the gate and go back and forth, that electrical field diminishes to the point that the cell becomes very, very weak and doesn't have enough power to sustain itself, to reproduce, to do the work of cleaning the blood or processing information or whatever kind of cell it is. Okay, so in a boil down to the least common denominator physically, this is the source of physical illness and disease. Now, here's the million-dollar question. What causes the dry state to become wet, which causes the gate to close, that the sodium and potassium can't go in, the electrical field gets weaker, and the mitochondria does not have potassium binding to it to make it wiggle and produce energy? That's the million-dollar question. Well, you should be able to tell by the title of the entire diagram. It's stress. Okay, now a couple other things before we define the stress. This cell has access, instant, complete access to two databases. One is your DNA, shown there on the right. On the left is the second one, which is your memories. And Southwestern University Medical School and Medical Center a number of years ago were trying to determine What is the cause of cancer, heart disease, all illness and disease? Because the answer is we don't know the great majority of the time. And what they found was absolutely groundbreaking. It's your memories, memories with anger, sadness, whatever. Um, those cause stress, and which causes this domino effect. Okay, so how does it work? If you're under stress, and stress can be caused by your memories, it can be caused by, we've all heard that like salt, too much salt is essential. You'll get dehydrated without salt, but the right amount of salt is essential to our functioning, or we're dehydrated and start to malfunction in all kinds of ways. Okay. Fatty and bad foods can raise your blood pressure, cause problems, etc. So how does that work? If we have too much salt, fatty foods, bad foods, blood pressure raising foods, etc., it raises the blood pressure in the blood vessels, veins, capillaries, etc., and it pushes blood plasma proteins out of the veins, arteries, and capillaries into the dry state around the cell, creating a wet state. As soon as that wet state happens, the gate to the cell closes, and the electrical field starts to diminish in power, and the mitochondria does not have potassium coming in anymore to bind to it to cause it to wiggle and produce power, because the gate closed because of the wet state. All right. Now, if you eat too much salt and it causes this for an hour and a half, at the end of an hour and a half, the blood plasma proteins go back into the veins, arteries, and capillaries. A dry state is reestablished. The gate opens. The sodium and potassium start going in and out again. The electrical field gets stronger. The potassium binds to the mitochondria, it starts wiggling, and no problem. No disease, no illness. An hour, hour and a half didn't make that big a difference. If you eat bad fatty foods, etc., same thing. If you have something happen out in your physical external circumstances, somebody looks at you funny, somebody calls you a name, you almost have a wreck on the road, and you get really panicked for a while. In any of those scenarios, probably in 10 minutes to 3 or 4 hours, you're pretty much back to normal. The blood plasma proteins go back into the veins, arteries, capillaries. The gate opens up. The sodium, potassium start going back and forth. The mitochondria starts wiggling, and no problem. Okay? And now, would it have been better if that hadn't happened, or if it had happened for an hour instead of 4 hours? Sure. But you're not going to get cancer from that. All right? But if you have memories from your database that are unresolved and unhealed, that have anger in them, depression, anxiety, low self-worth, identity, I don't measure up, I'm not good enough, or anger and rage at other people, as we're seeing so much in the world today, that can cause the blood plasma proteins to flood the dry state, making it wet, closing the gate 24/7 for as long as you have that memory that has not been resolved. And ladies and gentlemen, as best I can tell, and confirmed by feedback from doctors all over the world who've told me this, this is kind of the least common denominator cause of physical illness and disease, your physical stress paradigm. So I'm going to leave that up, at least for a little while, as we go to discussion, comments, question, and answers. Harry, did you want to add a Post-it note to that before we open it up?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how we've known pretty much since 2004 in that Southwestern study that memories are responsible for a lot of our illness and disease, but now we have a much better picture of what the physical process looks like how a traumatic or stressful memory can be converted to a disease gene manifesting.
Right.
Uh, so what practical advantage do you think that information gives us, like knowing how it physically behaves?
Well, I think we as human beings have a built-in need
Hmm.
to know why. Um, you probably heard of regression hypnosis, um, where it's not always successful. In fact, a lot of times it's not successful, but they hypnotize you, take you back to before some traumatic thing happened that they think is affecting your life today. And the basic reason for it is just so that you can understand why you're feeling this way and thinking this way and acting this way. Because before they do that, most situations like that, it's just, I don't know why. I keep drinking and I can't stop. I keep doing porn and I can't stop. I keep having anxiety in situations where there's no logical reason to have anxiety and I can't stop. Okay. And it's based on understanding, and even counseling and therapy that's not hypnosis, just talk counseling and therapy like cognitive behavioral counseling and therapy. The main aim of that is to discover the reason you're doing what you're doing and that it is reasonable, meaning I'm not just a psychopath or the worst person who's ever lived on the face of the earth or whatever like that or something like that. There is a logical explanation, and the logical explanation is not just that I'm a horrible, terrible person.
So
Um,
sort of it makes it a lot more real to people when we have like not only the psychological aspect but also the medical aspect, and we can see how they converge.
right. I think the key word I would use is understanding.
Hmm.
Gives you an understanding, and the understanding um, makes us feel more stable, like we're standing on solid ground instead of a million uh, pound thing of marshmallows. Like that would be just like, one of those ball cages that little kids go in and jump around and play in, but there's no solid ground. That's what's fun about it. You just keep falling and moving all over the place. No, when it comes to our life and health, we want some solid ground. And I believe this helps with that. It may not help 100%, but as I've presented this around the world, I've heard that over and over and over. That really helped me in thinking about this problem I have. So I hope it helps you.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's open it up for if you have a question or comment, you can go to the chat, um, type that in, and I will see it, and we will do our best to answer. If you don't have a question, that's fine, of course. If you don't have a question but want to make a comment or discuss, that's absolutely fine. And if you're watching this on replay, obviously you can't ask a live question, but if you'll write it down for next time or email it to us before next time, we will do our best to answer it next time. So, any questions, comments, discussion? The floor is now open.
I'm going to go ahead and stop this share.
Okay. All right. I don't have anything so far. And we are live on YouTube Live. And so our wonderful technician is manning that and sending me questions. And she's saying we don't have any questions right now. So we'll give you another minute or so. And then if we don't have any questions or discussion, we will say goodbye for today.
Okay, here we've got one from Larry DeVoot. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. How do we remove the stress paradigm and get the cell back to health? That's a
Yeah,
very
that's
natural follow-up.
yeah, that's basically what we're going to talk about next week, the mental emotional. But
Um,
I would say
that
that
I can't hear you. I think you've gotten muted somehow.
ah
Okay, you're back. You're back.
okay. Uh, Number one, that's what we're going to be talking about next time, the mental emotional cause. But I would say keep in mind that um, foods I eat that aren't healthy push me into the stress paradigm. Um, Traumatic things going on, conflict in relationships, all of those will push you into the stress paradigm. And by the way, conflict in a relationship
It's a
that
huge
is not
one.
that is not resolved, that can do the same thing as the memories. That can keep you in stress 24/7 until that relationship is resolved. I think that's one of the reasons that Jesus said, "Hey, if you're going to worship and you're crossways with another person, don't go worship. Go make it right with that person first, then go worship." Okay. Um, so we're so that's and now we know the science behind it. If you're crossways with another person, you're putting yourself in stress until you resolve that. Now, you don't have to resolve it successfully as far as the other person's response. You can't control that. All
Hmm.
you have to do is resolve it as far as you doing what you can in truth, not some game playing, but in truth. And if you do that, it will resolve it for you, even no matter if the other person doesn't respond the way you would hope they respond. So it's not dependent on their response. All right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of common sense stuff you can do, like make sure that you get enough sleep, eat well, stay hydrated, exercise, that sort of thing. Like you said, the relationship thing is massive. There's that one study that found a 600% difference in whether a person would live healthily to an old age or not based on the quality of their relationships, whether they were in conflict or harmonious.
Right.
Uh, there's also that book, How God Changes Your Brain, where they found that prayer is the single healthiest thing for the human brain,
Yeah,
with exercise
exercise
being a
being
distant
number
second.
two. Right.
Okay, we've got another one.
All right.
Um, Susan Holmes asks, once an issue is resolved, is there a time frame following when the health of the cell returns to normal? Are there any statistics on this? And I don't know that a lot of statistics have been done on this yet because it's very new.
Yeah, I don't know of studies done on the statistics of this, but what I would say is that when you restore the dry state around the cell and the gate opens up and the mitochondria starts producing power again, it sort of depends, I believe, without the statistics and research, on how far gone that cell is. Was it in stress for 4 hours or was it in stress for 4 years? Okay, that's a huge difference. And if it's 4 years, it may come back to health, it may not. It may be too far gone. Plus, has that cell infected a million other cells over 4 years that all of them have to be gotten out of stress too? And are some of them too far gone? Some of them probably aren't too far gone, but there's two or three variables there that I think is an individual by individual situation, but those are the main variables that come to mind. Harry, do you have something on that?
Yeah, like a lot of what you said is sort of like common sense, like broad strokes that you can take from like health as a wider field. You know, like in general, if someone has an issue, if it's something that's pervasive throughout their life and that they've had for a long time, um, and has been chronic, then it's likely to need a longer recovery period.
Right.
Like we know that like very short-term things that cause this problem, like you were talking about eating unhealthy foods or too much salt or something like that, we know that those resolve pretty fast.
Yeah.
And if we were to liken it to um, the fight or flight response, which is the one thing that causes acute stress over a short period of time, then I think the general rule is it takes about 20 or 30 minutes to recover from a shock if it's like a very short term thing.
Yeah, if it's not hugely traumatic, usually about 20 minutes. If it's traumatic, then you've got to do some work to resolve it sometimes. And
Yeah, so we don't have like the research to say that definitively that these things about the cell behave in the same way, but it seems likely that they would.
yeah, and the other thing to consider, and this used to be me, okay, where I would eat basically an unhealthy breakfast, an unhealthy lunch, an unhealthy dinner, and then
Mhm.
very often a snack before dinner. Okay. So basically, you're talking 14 out of 24 hours. I've got the wet state around my cells because I'm eating bad. And then digestion takes more energy and about three than anything else we do in about 3 or 4 hours. So probably halfway through my sleep, my body can start healing that. But is that enough time to get me out of stress before I wake up and eat the unhealthy breakfast? And now I'm back to the wet state again. So that can be sort of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of deal. So one of the things I started doing, like, this was 6 or 8 years ago, was intermittent fasting, where I ate all of my food in about a 6 to 7 hour period. So the rest of my day, my immune system can work on healing because it's not doing digestion. And then the wet state goes to the dry state around the cells because I haven't eaten anything bad in many hours, and then all through the night. And my health took another turn for the positive with intermittent fasting, which is I would highly recommend. Of course, talk to your doctor first. But yeah, you were going to say something, Harry?
Yeah, and another thought that I could add is she was asking about once an issue is resolved, what's the time frame? And I think another thing to consider there is that those sorts of issues, if we're talking about like traumatic memories or bad relationships, are rarely resolved all at once.
Yeah,
Um, so I would say most likely, unless the physical issue, whatever it is, has already gotten like really bad, um, then the mental and emotional stuff is more likely to be the bottleneck than the physical stuff.
that's absolutely correct. Yes. Now there's exceptions, but absolutely correct. I think we got another question.
Yeah. Okay, just a comment from Katie Darden. Great explanation. What you've discussed and explained is exactly why I have an interest and have studied in my own life for many decades, including becoming a hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner. I'm
Ah, very
I'm
cool.
not
I
sure what an
love
NLP is.
Yeah, I love NLP.
What is that?
Neuro-linguistic programming. I was trained in
Mhm.
it.
Okay.
It's basically using mind hacks to get you from stress to out of stress.
That goes along with the hypnotherapy.
That's right.
She says that she used to call NLP instant therapy because when it was effective, the stressors could shift almost immediately.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we've integrated a number of those things into what we do here over the years too. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's absolutely true. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, like with Trilogy, I know you used pieces of a whole bunch of different methodologies, and um, some of them were in that area.
Yeah. All right. If anyone else has a question, comment, discussion area, floor is open.
while we're waiting, maybe we can talk a little bit about what we're going to do next time. I think we're hitting the mental and emotional side of this next time, right?
Yeah, the next time we're doing the brother sister to this, and it'll be the number one mental emotional cause of illness and disease. And you may think you already know what that is with the memory thing, and that's a piece of it, but there's a lot more to it than that. So please try to join us next time too when we discuss the mental emotional.
Yeah, like if we wanted to, probably like half of our program would fit under that umbrella.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's totally legitimate because the
Mhm.
unseen is the parent of the seen. The seen is not the parent of the unseen. So we're dealing with sources when we deal with the mental, emotional, spiritual, where the physical, as you've seen with the diagram today, is symptoms. That's
Mhm.
dependent on something causing those blood plasma proteins to flood the dry state and close the gate on the cell.
Yeah, and like the first question we had, how do we remove the stress paradigm and get the cell back to health? That is the natural follow-up question, but the answer to that question is basically the entire program.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we haven't gotten that much into the spiritual, and I would say the spiritual is the real least common denominator, even above the mental emotional. Although they're so connected, you can't really disconnect them.
True, and you and I would say that the spiritual should be even a higher priority than the physical health. But we also believe that the physical health is to some degree a natural byproduct of pursuing that.
I would also say probably, and Harry, I think you would agree with this, but chime in. If you get your physical health right, but not the mental, emotional, not the spiritual, you're still in trouble. If you get the mental, emotional right, but not the physical and the spiritual, you're still in trouble. If you get the spiritual right, you're out of trouble.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Um, well, if you get the spiritual right, then the mental and the physical is likely to follow.
Yeah,
There are no guarantees, of course, but you should be headed in the right direction.
that's right.
If you get the physical right, but not the mental and spiritual, then you're likely to lose the physical too.
That's right. That's right. And I think and Harry, that's a great point. I think that's why so many people who come to us have spent tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars on their physical health. And it either
Mhm.
hasn't gotten better or it gets better and then gets worse, gets better and then gets worse. And it's like a self perpetuating negative feedback loop. But you fix the spiritual, mental, emotional, and it tends to get better and stay better.
Yeah, that's what Viktor Frankl talked about, where a hyperfixation on your own health or happiness tends to paradoxically push them farther out of your reach.
Right. Okay. We haven't had a question in a while. Harry, anything else you want to add before we close for today?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm glad we
Thank
got some questions this time.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much. Remember, in 2 weeks and 2 days, uh, the Practice of Paradise Home Study Mentorship Program will be released at 1/6 of its long-term probably cost because we're trying to build this 144 core group. And as it matures, the price will go up. But
Mhm.
so and enrollment is not going to be open indefinitely. We're going to open it up for probably a week or so and then shut it down and work with those people who have signed up to get them going, hold their hands, all that sort of thing, and then open it up again at another time period. But once we've got that 144, once we've got that founders group, the price will probably go up. We may have one more question.
Yeah, we do from Larry again. If you're experiencing chronic pain, how can that relate to the spiritual, mental, and emotional health?
Oh, all the
A good
time.
question.
I mean, uh,
Mhm.
almost 100%. In fact, if you're like me and you've got, okay, I got to figure out how it looks in the picture, and you've got bruises all on you pretty much any time because you don't think you're always rushing or hurrying, which is sort of me, and you bump into things and it's nothing serious. Well, I did break 2 ribs a few months ago for the second time in 3 years. But um, why do I do that? Why do I hurry when I don't need to hurry? The group Alabama wrote a great song about that. I'm in a hurry and don't know why. Okay, okay. Um, that's mental emotional. That's spiritual. Okay, and I'm working on that now at my age. All right, and again, this is a lifelong thing. This is not do it and stop. This is no, a journey and a process and a little bit every day and that sort of thing. But um, the mental and emotional and spiritual and memories, along with physical things too, like salt and bad food and trauma and all that, um, they push the blood plasma proteins into the dry state, flood it, the gate closes, the cell starts to die, etc. And you start to experience pain if that doesn't right itself in a reasonable period of time when enough other cells have done the same thing. So again, what the research shows about this one point, that if that gate remained open all the time and that mitochondria had plenty of energy, it would never die, never get sick, never put you in pain. Now, me bumping into things and causing bruises causes pain, but it's not from a physical source. Yeah, I mean the bruise is when I hit the edge of the table, but why I didn't pay attention and slow down to not hit the edge of the table is not physical. It's spiritual, mental, emotional. Okay, so it absolutely affects it almost. I'm not going to say 100%. I used to say 100% a lot. I'm getting away from that. There's very few things that are 100%. Most things are overdetermined. Um, but the great majority of the time, it's the spiritual, mental, emotional that ends up even in the physical pain by way of stress. And that is the physical stress paradigm. Next week, we'll talk about the mental, emotional stress paradigm.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, because of the way he phrased this question, that while we would certainly say that the spiritual is always the unseen is always the parent of the seen, and the spiritual is sort of the source of the physical. That doesn't mean that the relationship is one-sided by any means.
Right.
And like chronic pain, it might not necessarily worsen your spiritual, mental, and emotional health, but it'll certainly make it a lot harder.
That's right.
So it's
Absolutely.
a web of relationships.
Yeah.
And yet, pain is also positioned in the Bible as an opportunity to grow and become better.
Probably the number one opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason for that is that people don't tend to try to live healthier lives, and you could sort of say better as well in a way, if they don't have a compelling reason to.
Right.
Um, some amount of urgency is required to overcome our natural inertia, and you can generate that for yourself, but it's very difficult. And generally, it's much easier in a way to pursue change in your life if you're under a lot of stress.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's right. Most people expend the least amount of energy they have
Hmm.
to achieve their minimum results.
Hmm.
And what I would recommend is don't even think about minimum results. Think about
Hmm.
maximum results and be willing to expend all the energy I've got. I mean, why am I saving it for? I mean, I'm an old guy now. What am I storing up energy for? Work hard, spend it. I work harder today than I've ever worked in my life. I'm not sure how that worked out that way, but my wife talks to me almost every single week about how um, to her, that's a negative. That at my age, I'm working harder than I've ever worked. To me, it's a positive. Because I love what I do. But yeah, I would say get out of that minimum mindset and
Mhm.
say, man, I'm going to give it everything and see what happens.
Yeah, and in the program, Alex takes the lead on the vast majority of teachings, but there are a few that are a little bit more my thing, and that's something that I'll talk about a bit, that minimum versus maximum thing.
Yeah, and by the way, my opinion, the ones Harry does by himself are the best ones in the whole program. And it's not because of study, it's because of insight. That things I've never even thought about. So you can look forward to that and judge for yourself. All right,
Well,
we're
I don't
gonna
know about that.
all right, we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. These are recorded and posted. And so if you can't make it, you can watch them anytime you want. And please tell your friends. We're going to keep doing this. My plan is open ended. As long as you guys are here and it's providing a service, I believe in the big way that everything I've done in my life has really led me to this, to what we're starting now. So I'm so excited. Harry will tell you I won't shut up. I'm so excited about what we're doing now.
Yeah, that's true.
The practice of paradise and the path to paradise. So, Harry, thank you so much. Laura, thank you so much for engineering this. And I love you, everybody. God bless. And we'll see you next week for the number one cause of mental emotional, and share it with your friends. Bye bye.